Good morning everyone, and welcome to a new weekend vlog. I hope you've all been having a wonderful week. This week's vlog is really a celebration of spring, and I've got a lot of spring activities planned. I can't wait to show you some of them. For one thing, I really want to decorate my Easter tree this weekend because I can't believe that Easter is actually just next weekend. That's quite scary. So I want to start on a bit of decorating, and I always do an Easter tree, so I'm going to do that with all of you later today. I also want to go into the woods near us and forage for some wild garlic because that started growing and it makes the most delicious pesto. I'll share the recipe in the description box, and I'll show you what I do with the pesto later as well, because I do this pasta dish that I really like and my mouth is set for that for lunch today, so I'm looking forward to that. So essentially this weekend I'm just going to enjoy celebrating spring and having a quiet, relaxed weekend, but doing a lot of my favourite things. And also I'm celebrating not only spring but the relaunch of my newsletter this weekend, and so that you could be a part of this celebration, I hope, I've created a free gift for those of you who sign up to my newsletter. So I've been working hard over this the past few weeks and I'm so pleased with what I've created. I've done a free PDF booklet that you can download, and it's all about keeping a commonplace book in the springtime. So you may remember how much I love my own commonplace book that I bought from Starsmead Bookbinders. She does some really beautiful ones, but you could use any journal, whether lined or unlined, to keep a commonplace book. And in this I just essentially record favourite passages from books or verses of poetry, extracts from letters or lyrics, and I also put in recipes that I come across and want to record, all that kind of thing. So it's really a jumble of different things that I love, but I find that it's such a fun journal to do, and I think it's a wonderful source of creative inspiration as well. And so what I've done for this downloadable PDF booklet is I've put together some of my absolute favourite quotes for the springtime. I've also created a spring book list, and I'm sharing one of my favourite spring tea time recipes, which is for a rhubarb and elderflower cake. I've also put a lot of gorgeous spring artwork in there because I really wanted to make it as beautiful as possible and a real celebration of spring and also of creativity and the joy of journaling. And if you're still a bit confused as to what a commonplace book really is, then I've done an introduction to what they are in this guide as well. So I'll put a link for where you can download it. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, then you'll get this free PDF. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. It's been lovely hearing from those of you who've got it already and how much that you've been enjoying it. It's been really nice to have got your emails and messages, so thank you very much. But anyway, I also wanted to show you some things that just came in the post before I go and decorate the Easter tree. I was so thrilled to get this in time for Easter actually. This is a gift for my mum, but I'll give it to her early. And I'd pre-ordered this from Design for Today. They republish and publish a lot of wonderful art books, and this is one that I'd pre-ordered. It's a very special book. It's Portrait of Dorset by Rena Gardner. It's an amazing Dorset artist, and I think this was first published in the 60s. Yes, it says the first edition was designed, drawn, lithographed, written, printed, bound and published at the Workshop Press in Dorset by Rena Gardner, 1960. And it says this edition is published by Design for Today in an edition of 750, including 150 special bound. at Ludlow Bookbinders. I wasn't able to get the sort of special bound one because it was so expensive, and this is quite pricey as it is, but I wanted to get it for my mum because she's a huge Rena Gardner fan. She's a Dorset girl herself, so of course she loves anything about Dorset, and this is the most beautiful book. It's all about areas in the southeast Dorset, and the illustrations accompanying the text and the history of the area are just gorgeous. I mean, really so lovely. She was such a talented artist, and my mum has collected some of the original Rena Gardner books herself, but she doesn't have anything quite like this, I know that. So I think she'll be really, really thrilled. So I'm going to give that to her later. She's had a quick look at it already when it came in the post, but then I whisked it away so I could show you, so she'll get to have a proper look later. But I was so pleased that my pre-order arrived in time for Easter, so that's really lovely. And if you don't know Design for Today, then I really recommend having a look at their online shop. I'll link to that as well in the description box, because they do some really beautiful art books, and they do some really interesting books for children as well, actually, that I think are very special. So I really recommend them. And then I got a few other books in the post I wanted to show you. I'd ordered myself another Emmy Atkinson book that I was missing. You might remember I got an Emmy Atkinson book at Barter Books, which I showed you in my last vlog, and I was really pleased to find this one online, not too expensive, and it's one of the earlier ones in her series that are illustrated by Harold Jones, and I love his illustrations. I love the M papers that are on all of his books, and his illustrations are just so lovely. So really pleased to have got this one, Smuggler's Gap, in the post as well. And then I read about this in the Daunt Books newsletter. They send out really good newsletters where they highlight books that have recently come out. I really recommend signing up for it because I've found lots of interesting books through reading their newsletter. And they highlighted this one. It's called The Davenports by Christelle Marquis, and it's a YA book, and it's set in the 1910s. It says the Davenports are one of the most influential families in 1910s Chicago, and their beautiful children are the toast of the elite social scene. They are also one of the few wealthy black families in Chicago. For the Davenport sisters and their friends, life seems to follow a set plan: marriage, family, duty, but their hearts are restless. Olivia seeks a perfect love, while her younger sister Helen is desperate to pursue her true passions. Olivia's best friend Ruby must secure a marriage to save her family's fortunes, while the Davenport's maid, Amy Rose, seeks her own path. And it says this is inspired by the real-life story of the C.R. Patterson dynasty. This sweeping tale of love and destiny is perfect for fans of Bridgerton and the Gilded Age. I haven't actually seen the Gilded Age. I do like Bridgerton, but I haven't seen the Gilded Age. If you've seen it, then let me know what you think of it, because I am tempted to watch it. Anyway, I thought this sounded really good, so I bought it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And then the next book has a really funny story behind it. For years and years and years, I've been trying to remember this book that I read probably when I was about 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old, and I couldn't remember anything about it. I thought one of the characters was called Gentian, but that was about all I could remember, apart from the fact that I'd loved this book as a child. And my mum and I have been trying to remember what on earth this book was for years. And so I don't know how my mum, it just sort of suddenly came to her, the name of the author, Ethel Cook Eliot. And through that, she was able to find the book. This was republished. I think it must have been republished around the time that I first read it, because it was originally published in 1923. And then this edition that I read came out in 1996. So it's an old story, but it was republished in my childhood, and I just remember loving it. So my mum finally remembered what it was and ordered the second-hand copy for me. It's only just come, so I haven't even really had a chance to look through it, although it's definitely the book. It's definitely the right book, the one I've been trying to remember. And it actually looks like it's a lovely spring read because it starts in the springtime, but I can't remember anything else about it. I don't know if it will stand up at all to a reread as an adult. I don't know what I will think of it now. I just remember I really loved it as a child, so I'm really curious about this one, and I'm so happy that my mum just had this brainwave and remembered the author and could track it down for me. So that was really lovely. So yes, a bit of an eclectic mix as always that arrived in the post, but I'm really thrilled with all of these. I want to tell you about the books I've been reading lately as well, because I've been reading quite a lot this week, but I'll tell you about that later, because now I want to go down and start on decorating the Easter tree and going out and getting the wild garlic and all of that. So I'll bring you along with me. So I've finished decorating the Easter tree and I think it looks lovely. I'm so pleased. It was such a fun thing to do as well. The ornaments I use are all by Elizabeth Harbour, the lovely wooden ones. I've mentioned her lots of times on my channel before because I also buy a lot of her Christmas ornaments too. But she has some beautiful ones for doing an Easter tree. And it's just a tradition in our family that we've always done a tree for Easter, either using sort of pussy willow branches, but last year I got this special little tree made by Gisela Graham, I think is the maker who did this, and it's just so pretty, and now I can bring it out every year, which is wonderful. So I had a lot of fun doing that. I have some lovely spring flowers that have been delivered from a local florist, so I'm feeling so spring-like. And I also have put up some of these lovely mantelpiece ornaments by Elizabeth Harbour as well. I love this little Easter house. It's just so sweet with the little bunnies in the windows. I think that's adorable. And I've put it on the dresser where it looks lovely with my spring mugs too. I've also got another one. This one, the Easter bunny. I think that's just so, so sweet. So I've put this one up on the dresser as well, so it can look very festive and Easter-like. Anyway, I'm just going to finish having some tea, and then I'm going to go out and forage for some wild garlic for lunch. Apparently the best time to get wild garlic is when it's not yet in flower. So you want it when the leaves are very young and tender still. So this seems like the perfect time to be getting it. And yes, I'm getting hungry, so I better go forage. So we've just finished lunch. Mum just got back in time.
It was delicious. I did. Oh, I had such a fiasco. I mean, I felt such a fool. Gone to do some shopping, and I got to the car park, and as I was getting out of the car, I don't know what I did, but somehow I must have hit the like the, or what you call it, cruise control. And I got out, and then I got back in and I turned it on. There was this weird thing and everything, and I'm like, oh my God, what does that mean? Unfortunately, I mean, really, this is why I need you with me, because I began to panic a bit. So at first I just sort of hit every button I was trying to stop it. And then I realised, oh, maybe it was when actually it wasn't when I got out of the car. I thought it was when I was trying to find heart radio, because I lost it. Honestly, Miranda knows me well. Heart. It's like just pop music, and I love to listen to the car. Poor Miranda does not really enjoy it, but I do.
It gets it all going.
Yeah.
You love it, don't you?
I do.
So whenever I'm not there, I'm sure she plays it extra
loud. I do. I do keep the windows up, but I do. But anyway, I got in a real panic about it, because I thought, oh, what if it suddenly shoots off at 50? I don't know what I was meant to be doing with this. So anyway, finally I found the little book, and I sort of sat there. And I was really conscious of people walking by and looking at me. I thought, what on earth is that idiot of a woman doing? But anyway, I found it. I managed to press the right button and get it off. It was like a bit of a panic. I mean, I've never used cruise control in my life. I can't imagine. You know, we don't really drive like that here. So it was like, oh, no, don't want that.
Thank goodness you.
But you in the meantime have done a beautiful job on the Easter tree.
Yes. It does look pretty, doesn't it?
It's really pretty. So spring in with that lovely lunch. That was
delicious.
delicious.
It was nice, wasn't it?
The
burrata added such a nice creaminess. Yeah.
It's really good.
I'll put the recipe from the pesto sauce in the description box because I just added the pesto sauce to some spaghetti and then with half burrata nestled on top and a bit of pepper. And it was really nice.
So tasty.
It was, and
lovely.
It tasted very spring-like.
It did. It's a lovely
very
thing.
Sort of delicate, nice flavours. So yeah, we recommend, and you're going to have a look at this now.
I'm so excited about this. I really am.
I'm so glad it came in time for Easter.
I'm so lucky, and really,
it's beautiful.
I knew these books when I was a child, but she actually hand bound and hand printed and everything.
Yes.
It was a labour of love for Reading a Gardener. She was a teacher actually, I think of art, most likely of art, at one of the local girls' grammar schools. So that's really interesting to me. And looking at this, it's just amazing. I've never seen this one, you know, it was extremely rare.
Yes, I thought that you didn't have this at all.
Had a card of Durdle Door.
Oh yes. Yes, I remember, we do have that as a card, which is lovely.
Yes, it is, but this is wonderful.
Yes, and you're a Dorset girl.
I definitely am.
So.
Definitely born there and stayed there till I was 14, and then when I first came back and lived with, you know, my uncle, your great uncle, that was in Dorset. So I love it. I'd love to get back sometime
and I used
soon.
to go down to Dorset to visit you and Uncle Reg a lot. So I've got very fond memories of it too.
It's a beautiful county. I mean, I love Yorkshire. It's lovely too, but Dorset is different, and you've got beautiful countryside there as well. I really recommend a visit.
Yeah.
But this is delightful. I can't wait to read it, to look at it. It's also familiar to me too.
I know. Well, I knew you'd really love this.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
I'm glad you like it.
Oh, I'm really thrilled.
Well, I think we should put the kettle on and you can sit with a cup of tea and look at that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you about what I've been reading this week. Okay, so I've made another cup of tea and I've come back up to my bedroom with my pile of books because there are a few that I wanted to chat to you about. Obviously this last week I reread The Wind in the Willows for the Comfort Book Club discussion that went up on Thursday. And it was so much fun to return to this classic. I really enjoyed it. I love the beginning where Mole gives up on spring cleaning and goes out and decides to have adventures instead and ends up meeting all the folk of the riverbank and the wild wood. And it was just so lovely to read it as the cherry tree is blossoming outside of my window. Though it is a book that's perfect for many different seasons. I absolutely love the Christmas caroling scene in it as well. That's so special, and I always like to reread that one at Christmas time as well. And there's some beautiful summery scenes too. So yes, I really enjoyed reading this one again. And then I also wanted to read a bit more about Kenneth Grahame himself. So I read this biography, Eternal Boy, The Life of Kenneth Grahame by Matthew Dennison. This has actually been on my shelf for a while because I found it in a Oxfam, I think, in London a few years ago, but this was definitely the time to finally read it, and I'm so glad I did because there was so much about Kenneth Grahame I didn't know, and I really recommend this if you want to learn a bit more about the man behind The Wind in the Willows. Then this is a very informative read. I have to say it's also a very sad book. Kenneth Grahame had a lot of tragedy in his life. When he was still very little, his mother died. And the family was split up from then, really. His father sunk more and more into alcoholism. So Kenneth Grahame and his siblings were sent to live with their grandmother, who, although she took care of their physical needs, wasn't very loving by the sound of it. So Kenneth Grahame from that point really learnt to retreat more and more into himself, into his own imaginative world. And he loved exploring the countryside around where his grandmother lived, which was also right by the Thames. And that really, I think, ignited a lot of his love for the natural landscape and the Thames in particular. But he then was sent to school, and although he wanted to go to Oxford University, he had to make a practical decision, and his uncle really wanted him to become a clerk in the Bank of England. So in the end he did that, but he kept his love of imaginative worlds and kept writing. And he was actually a famous author before writing The Wind in the Willows. He published a lot of short stories for adults, but they were actually about children, and they were very, very popular. But he kept working, worked his way up to being the Secretary of the Bank of England, which was incredible. But then he had a very unhappy marriage. And although The Wind in the Willows was first started as stories that he told to his son ended up dying tragically as well when he was still quite a young man. So a lot of tragedy in his life, but I thought Matthew Dennison told his story really poignantly, really well. So it was a fascinating read, and I very much recommend it. And then I recently read Heartburn. This was a reread for me as well, by Nora Ephron. I read this the other week actually, but I forgot to tell you about it. And I enjoyed returning to this. It's a book that really evokes its time, but there's something still so fresh about Nora Ephron's voice. It's just incredible, her wit and dry humour. There's no one really like her. And I really loved reading this one again. It's such a brief read. If you've never read it, I do recommend picking it up. And then I'm still reading The Lark on the Wing, which I told you about last week. This is the sequel to The Lark in the Morn, about a young Quaker girl who wants to become a singer. And in The Lark on the Wing, she finally realises that dream, but it takes her some time. So I'm really enjoying this, but I'm just kind of reading it slowly last thing at night before I go to sleep. And then I've started Kate Morton's new book, Homecoming. I was sent this proof copy a few weeks ago, and it's due out in April, and I'm trying to read it now, and I'm really enjoying it already. I've not got that far yet. I need to have a proper couple of hours where I just sit down and read solidly to get a bit more into it, but I'm loving it already. Kate Morton is a real favourite author of mine, and this seems to be just as good as her other books so far. Like all of her books, there's this element of part of the story is set in the past and part in the present, so there are at least two different kind of storylines going on in different times, but they relate to each other, and you know that in some way these characters are all going to link up and connect. And it starts out in Australia in the late 1950s when a horrific accident or suspicious death has occurred. A discovery is made of a mother and her children sort of lying on a riverbank and all dead, having just had a picnic. And then it sort of flashes forward to 2018, and it's about a woman who's struggling with her career as a journalist a bit, and she's an Australian living in London. She gets a call that her grandmother, who essentially brought her up, is very unwell. So she decides to fly back to Australia. Haven't got that far yet, but I am really enjoying it. I'm already invested in the characters, and I just want to find out more. So I can't wait to settle down and read this more over the Easter holidays. And then both Mum and I have been dipping into this book a bit, although I haven't had a chance to really get into it properly. But someone on my last video asked if I'd heard of this, and I have actually just been reading it a bit, and that's 4 French Holidays by Anne Hall. And it says Daphne du Maurier, Stella Gibbons, Rumour Garden and Marjorie Sharp, and their novels inspired by France. So it's such an interesting premise to this. It says 4 popular novelists of the same generation each wrote a novel inspired by a holiday that the author spent in France. So Anne Hall examines Rumour Garden and her book The Green Gage Summer, which is one of my favourite books, and it's partly based on an experience that Rumour Garden had and her sister as well. And then she looks at Marjorie Sharp's 1936 holiday in southern France that led to Still Waters, which was a short story of hers, and then The Nutmeg Tree, which is a full-length novel. Then in 1955, Daphne du Maurier went to France to research French family history, and the novel The Scapegoat was the immediate result of that holiday. And then in 1966, Stella Gibbons went on a last trip to the continent visiting a friend, and it says that her stay is obliquely reflected in her novel The Snow Woman. So these are 4 British novelists that I really enjoy. I love all their work. I myself love France, so I love the fact that this is sort of covering 2 of my favourite topics in a way, and it's already making fascinating reading. I've only just started, but this is just right up my street. I'm so thrilled to get this, and I thought a lot of you would be interested in it as well. So another one I look forward to reading over the Easter holidays. And speaking of the Easter holidays, I'm going to have one myself this year, so I'll be missing a couple of Sundays. I'll be back on April the 23rd is, I think, the Sunday. So I look forward to seeing all of you again then, but I'm definitely in need of a bit of a break, and I also need to do some other work that is not social media related. So I'm going to have a couple of weeks off from YouTube, but I'm excited to also have the chance to film and catch up and get ahead a little bit whilst I'm taking some time away from actually uploading videos. And I'm looking forward to coming back more at the end of April. But I hope you have wonderful spring holidays. Do remember to download my Spring Commonplace book guide, which you can find at mirandajanemills.com/Spring Commonplace book, all one word, all together. Miranda Jane Mills is a new website that I'm working on. I have been working on for ages, and part of the problem with being on the constant hamster wheel of content creation means it's very, very difficult for me to build other things at the same time sometimes. So that's one of the things I'm going to be working on, not only Miranda's notebook, but also a whole brand new website. But I'm excited about everything that I want to do and everything coming up, and I'm looking forward to coming back refreshed. But do download that guide if you would like it too. It's full of spring inspiration. But thanks so much for watching. Extra big thanks as always to those of you who pressed the super thanks button on my last video. I so appreciate your generosity, and thank you to everyone who takes the time to comment and like and watch my videos. I so appreciate you too. And I'll see you again at the end of April. Goodbye.